Managing a team of investigators just got easier with TrackOps, the all-in-one case management software. Are you ready to enhance case flows and drive efficiency? TrackOps offers powerful management and coordination tools to streamline workflows and communication, all designed to keep your team synchronized and focused on the task at hand. With TrackOps, you can easily distribute workloads, track individual performance, and ensure deadlines are met. Plus, the TrackOps mobile app allows investigators to access case activities on the go. And the TrackOps video app allows for simple and consistent timestamping, all included at no extra cost. Start streamlining your investigation process today. Visit trackops.com for a free 15-day trial and experience the power of efficient team management. TrackOps, empowering teams, simplifying management. This episode is brought to you by 4 Pillars Research, a nationwide leader in policy limit searches, now expanding its services to support private investigators working with injury attorneys. Since 2019, 4 Pillars Research has been known for its professionalism and top-tier customer service. If you're a private investigator, you know how crucial it is to provide accurate and complete information to your clients. Research can be time-consuming and challenging, especially when accuracy is non-negotiable. That's where 4 Pillars Research comes in. Unlike other firms that outsource their work, 4 Pillars handles everything in-house, ensuring you receive precise policy limit details of the at-fault party before litigation even begins. With 4 Pillars, you get more than just data. Each client is paired with a dedicated client engagement specialist, ensuring personalized service and meticulous attention to detail. And for those of you handling multiple cases, they even offer loyalty programs for high-volume clients. So if you're looking to elevate your investigative work and provide your clients with the best possible service, contact 4 Pillars Research today. Let them handle the complex research so you can focus on delivering results. That's 4 Pillar Research, your trusted partner in policy limit research. Reach out now and take your investigative services to the next level. Do you enjoy our podcast and the guests we bring you? Since 2019, Matt and his team have done their very best to give you amazing shows each week. If you feel like our show has helped you to be a better investigator, or maybe even inspired you to become an investigator, please let us know. We're looking for testimonials. Drop Matt an email with a recorded 20 to 30 seconds of you talking about this podcast. You can also email him something verbal about the website. His email is matthews@satellitepi.com. And if you really feel blessed for having this content, consider supporting Matt and our show by joining Investigators Toolbox. You really have to see version 2.0. And at just 49 cents a day, it's a no-brainer. Now let's jump in to this week's episode. Welcome to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. Today we take a look at one of our new sponsors, TrackOps Case Management Software. We welcome Ian Ricketson to the program, and he breaks down some myths about case management and why you need to have a dependable system in place to be a successful investigator. Let's jump right into it with the guys. Please welcome Ian Ricketson and private investigator Matt Spare.
And welcome everyone to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spare, your host. Today we have a sponsor. We're going to do a little highlight profile on one of our newer sponsors. I'm really excited to welcome Ian Ricketson from TrackOps. Ian, how are you?
Hey, doing well. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Appreciate it.
Excited to have you on, man. We've known each other for a long time, and I've known your company for a long time. I think the first time I learned about you guys was probably back in like 2017, maybe 2015.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
I think it was like the Super Conference in New York.
Okay.
And those who know what the Super Conference was, they know what I'm talking about. And it was the first time that I was turned on to case management, and of course I waited years and years and years to actually start doing it.
Sure.
And I learned my lesson that I actually should have been doing it much longer before. But tell me a little bit about TrackOps and kind of how you got into the business.
Sure. Yeah. We got started in 2005. I actually worked as a database administrator for a data information broker, investigation platform. There was a pre-employment screening kind of thing. And for my background, I recognized immediately that like there's a lot of emails going around, there's a lot of paper and sticky notes and things like that. So we actually at one point cobbled together a makeshift system back then just to kind of navigate the challenges we were dealing with then. But at some point we realized, there's a market here. We were working with a lot of other investigation companies and everybody kind of had the same problem. My brother actually went to Art Institute. So when he was kind of conveniently graduating, I said, hey, let's get together and do something. I think there's an opportunity here. So we worked with a local company in the area to kind of, test our idea and kind of see if everything's going to work. And we put together the first platform, and we went live in 2006, and we've been rolling ever since. So that's how we kind of got started.
Amazing. Yeah, there's always such a need. And back then, I mean, it's like people using Excel sheets, Word documents,
Oh yeah.
whatever, smoke signals, like how
Smoke signals. I mean, yeah, this is 2006. You got to remember it was like, before even social media. I mean, this is like the infancy of networking. Cloud computing wasn't even a thing yet.
Yeah.
So like when we first started, we literally had physical servers co-located in a data center where we had people who went down there and, you needed to add more customers. We had to, increase the hard drive space, means going and installing new hard drives.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was a whole different world, but it was a good place to start. And, we've significantly evolved since then. But, it was kind of the infancy of software as a service kind of generally.
Yeah.
It's kind of just getting started.
Yeah, I feel like the big P word there, right? The pandemic. When things shut down and more of our everyday life went up on the cloud, our ability to make a living and do what we needed to do, that the whole idea of like remote working and remote access became more acceptable. I feel like
For sure.
people that were afraid of the technology were like, okay, now I'm forced to do this, so I got to learn how to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And there was a lot of people who, before the pandemic, worked solely in offices and together, and were forced at one point to be distributed, and then realized that they had a single point of failure, where, how am I going to communicate? How am I going to share information when we can't even be in the same room together?
Right.
So unfortunately, that, took place. But I mean, it was a real eye opener for a lot of people, I think.
I think so. Yeah, for sure. I mean, during that time, we were actually contracted to go to attorneys' offices, pick up files and deliver them to attorneys' houses.
Yeah.
Because we were allowed to work in New York. We had gotten that exception as necessary.
Yeah, necessary.
Right. We were deemed necessary. So
Crazy.
how do you do that when you're not getting investigative work, when you're not getting surveillances because everyone's wearing a mask or shut down? Like, how are you making a living? Well, what else can we do? Oh, we can go to your office and pick up some files and deliver them to your attorneys.
Yeah,
Wear gloves.
for sure.
It's okay.
That's pretty funny.
But you do what you have to do to get by. But
that is for sure.
It's been very interesting to see how technology has changed and how it has affected our ability to do work and get things done, and the comfort level of doing things. I mean, you talk about 2006 to 2024 now. Like the things we can do now, couldn't do back then. I mean, they were George Jetson dreams of like, yeah, one day we'll be able to do this kind of stuff, right?
Totally. A lot of stuff is moved from distributed systems and isolated systems to now everything's available to be done over the web, with cloud computing and I mean, now we're getting into AI is going to be a whole new frontier. Right. But there was a challenge back in the day. I mean, I remember having the concept of uploading a 100 megabyte video to the internet was a huge challenge. Like how are people going to do this? How are they going to watch it? How are they going to download it? I mean, it's just the size was enormous, the compression.
Somewhere there's a hamster on a wheel going, come on, man.
Yeah, that was a big deal. So where we are now, people streaming live, video all over the place. And
Yeah.
It's definitely a different world.
It's crazy, right? And
Yeah,
everything's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Um,
for
and
sure.
our cameras are better, so they're making us look better, which is good. Uh,
For sure.
some of us need all the help we can get.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and the whole concept too of encryption, right? And that's something that's been around forever, but seeing how it has grown and it being accepted and even being required. And I think that's one of the things that folks have to understand. I know when I'm talking to my attorney clients, why don't you email things anymore? Right? It's the first thing they say. Oh, I don't like
Sure.
this. Can't you just send me an email?
Yeah,
Well, no. I mean, has your system been compromised? Have you ever been hacked?
right.
Oh, well, somebody tried to get in last week. Okay.
Yeah,
So, do you really want that sensitive information that we're trading back and
for
forth to
sure.
be exposed? Oh,
I
no, I don't want that. Right. And then
I
they
think I think in the past, people were very dismissive of security. And it was
Mhm.
one of those things, maybe we heard about hackers or whatever the thing, but nobody's ever going to be involved in that. And, as the internet became more connected, we saw a lot of data breaches, especially big ones. And then there were companies that people used, and eventually everybody's data has been exposed now. I mean, people get an email every day. Oh, it's Home Depot or whatever it is, somebody's information's out there. Um, so the clients have really driven the requirement.
Sure.
Now you deal a lot with an insurance company, let's say, and they're not going to talk to you unless you can provide your security documentation.
Yep.
And fortunately for us, we always have harped on security. I mean, that was something that we always started back in the beginning, and people were really, dismissive of having to do any sort of security or compliance, have to deal with that. But as soon as their clients required it, it
Yep.
became really an advantage for us because it's something that we've always done. And even today, we're really transparent about security. We have ways for people to get all of our audits and our certificates and our penetration testing and everything because it's an
Mhm.
important aspect of running a company these days. And it's still,
Yep.
to me, probably the number one most misunderstood concept for business owners generally, just in
Yep.
any just regular business owners. So it's a lot of education for sure.
Yeah. And you find that a lot of businesses in the US are very reactionary. Yeah,
Yes.
we'll clean up the mess after the after the glass fell off the table. We'll sweep it up.
Yeah, for sure.
Never
Um,
mind. Putting a bumper in to make sure it doesn't fall over. Right.
Yeah, I remember when we first added multi-factor authentication in the application and we were encouraging it, and adoption rate was almost zero.
Yep.
Because people are like, well, what is this? You got to have an extra code. It takes so long to log in. Like, what is this? And now uh, people, number one question we get about multi-factor authentication is how do we make it mandatory for everybody, right?
Right. Exactly. Or how do we make it more, more, I guess, cover more? Like, just how do we beef it up and make it even, better than it was before? Right. I remember when I had this thing with Investigator's Toolbox, right? When I was starting it up, having a discussion with my developer. And do you want to do Google Authenticator? Do you want to do this? I said, no, I need to dumb it down. I need to make sure that just the lay person can get the code on their phone and sign into this thing. And I remember having a conversation with him. He's like, no, we don't want to do this. You got to do it this way or that way. And it's a decision that you make, right? So for me, I'm like, I'm not storing any information that really that's secretive, that's sensitive, right? I don't
Right.
store credit card information. I'm not storing, documents per se. Everything is just the way it's structured is differently. So I don't really need that level of security background. And like he couldn't wrap his head around it. Like the concept of it. I remember going back and forth. And then you start talking about different countries, right? So different countries have different rules, different ways to go about doing things. And I
Yeah,
remember
for sure.
with the authentication codes that you had to buy a certain amount of codes, and then you had to buy a certain amount of codes per country. Okay, so how many people from England are using our services that I got to send authentication codes to? Now I got to start buying all this stuff, and so the more um bulky you made it, the more beefy that you made the system, like there was a substantial cost that
For
was being
sure.
added to it. And I didn't want to raise the fees for everybody saying, okay, you're going to use this.
Yeah.
Now it's going to cost X amount of dollars because I got all these fees I got to pay to do this stuff. So it's
Yeah,
definitely a balancing act for sure.
for sure. And you know, the fortunate thing about that technology is as it becomes more of a normal mainstream required thing, the cost will go down, you know, and it already has significantly
Sure.
because,
Yeah.
you know, I remember there used to be applications out there that if you wanted multi-factor, you had to pay extra. Like that was like an
Right.
add-on.
Yeah,
Now it
exactly.
just doesn't make any sense. If you look at
Perfect.
that back, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, protecting your own system is probably the number one most important thing you'd want to do.
Right.
So
Yeah.
now it's just kind of
Somebody
the
was trying to
norm.
make a buck doing something,
I know,
right?
right?
And
Totally.
they were until we figured out, like, you know what? Maybe it shouldn't be that way.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Hopefully, all that money didn't go to Russia.
Yeah, right. Probably somewhere.
Probably did.
Yeah.
It was super important. You know, this is a good place to take a break. So we're going to tap out, and when we come back and regroup here, I really want to get into some misconceptions about case management, um, some considerations at the different points of level of business for you. You know, wherever you are in your career, if you're not using it, why you should be. Let's tackle that subject, and yeah, you know, just get into the whole idea, the concept of why it's so important. If you have any desires to grow your business to a certain level, how you should have some sort of system in place. So, everybody sit tight, and we will be right back.
After 4 years of development, Scope Now is proud to announce the release of Grid. Grid combines OSINT with real-time physical data to achieve new levels of intelligence gathering. Grid supports over 50 data types and hundreds of thousands of sources. Upgrade your OSINT capabilities with Grid and elevate your intelligence team today at scopenow.com. The Campbell Group has teamed up with PI Perspectives to offer listeners top-notch, affordable insurance solutions. Private investigators can get insurance for their business for as low as $305 per year. Apply now at piperspectivesinsurance.com and receive a quote back within 24 hours. Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes. Over the past year, our industry has been the target of foreign governments and agencies that have attempted to recruit unsuspecting investigators to gather intelligence or immediate expatriates. PI Perspectives is teaming up with the Federal Bureau of Investigations to get the word out about this ongoing crisis. If you've been contacted by an individual or company that might seem suspicious, please contact the FBI at tips.fbi.gov. You can also contact the New York field office at 212-384-1000 to report suspicious activity in any state. The link is also in the show notes. Even if you completed a job and it still doesn't sit right with you, you can report this activity. The only way to stop this trend is to work together. So let's do it. Satellite Investigations has launched its new website full of great new content. Matt and his team have released some great informative blogs. Make sure you log into LinkedIn and follow Satellite Investigations for the latest content.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is Matt Sperry, your host. We are talking to Ian Ricketson from Track Ops. Ian, welcome back to the program.
All right. Thanks. Looking forward to it.
So glad to have you here. So before we took the break, I teased about some misconceptions about case management systems. So what would you say is the number one misconception from an investigator about using a case management system?
Well, there's a few. I think the first and foremost is that people think that if they have a system, it has to be their own system that nobody else has. Like it has to be white labeled to the max, where they don't want anyone to know that anybody else, you know, has developed their system. They think they want it to be all in-house. And, you know, over time, they'll realize really quickly that that's really not the greatest idea. our system is somewhat white label, and that's somewhat of a legacy carryover because a lot of people who use TrackOps rely on us to provide all that security documentation that we were talking about and our reputation to go along with their app so that their clients are even willing to put data into it. It used to be if you had your own system, that was the way to go. Like we're proprietary, you're going to use us because it's a value add, right? Like we have something that nobody else has. But I think over time, when they've had to provide auditing and certifications and audit, penetration testing, it becomes a realization that this is not something that we want to do. We should probably stay in our own lane and piggyback up with somebody else. So now, we encourage people to say, let your client know that you use TrackOps. They may have already had us vetted as a vendor already, and it might make your life a lot easier. So I would say that's one. And then kind of piggybacking on that, a lot of people have always had the conception that building a system is cheaper than using an existing system. And it's more of like, it might cost us a lot up front, but once we build the system, we'll recoup all the costs. And I think those people realize pretty quickly that software generally of any type is really a living, breathing app, and this building your app, it's a child, right? You have to deal with it every single day, and it's growing and changing and evolving. So it's never a product that you buy off the shelf and it sits there. It's something that will take significant investment for a long time.
I think that's a very important point, right? So if you're looking at, let's just apps, right? You're talking about apps, right? So the difference between a native app and a hybrid app. I went through that whole exercise when I built for Investigators Toolbox, the app for it, right? Do I want to build something that will need continuous upgrades and continuously, having to add pages and as I add content, like doesn't make sense to do it that way? Or do I go with a hybrid that's really just pulling off the website, the changes that we make on the website are now replicated in the app? And that was ultimately the decision that I ended up going with because it was cheaper. It was a lot cheaper.
Yeah, for sure.
I do pay a yearly fee to them. But there wasn't this one big upfront one-time costs. But, as you stated before, there is never, one pay cost set and forget. Like you're always going to have to come back to it and upgrade it. And I think companies like yours that succeed understand that and understand that you have to take some of your revenue and you have to continue to do R&D. And if you're not doing that, you're doing a disservice to your client base.
Right. And, and a lot of people are hesitant to want to pay for something that they don't see an immediate return on investment in terms of, they don't see the value of the time saved right away, right? They want to basically say, oh, if I'm going to spend $1,000, I should make 2,000 this week, or whatever it is. So yeah, over time, you'll see a significant return on investment when you're using software that streamlines those operations.
So one of the other recommendations I have for investigators, something that I started doing probably about 3 years ago, and I get almost zero complaints about it, is adding on an administration charge to my invoice. So every invoice we generate, and we generate a lot, has a minimum charge of X amount of dollars to help cover the cost of case management, to help cover the cost of my accounting software, to help cover the cost of the person who does all that stuff, like their salary,
sure.
That does it for me. And, I work specifically with attorneys. I don't know how it's like with insurances because I don't really deal with insurance companies. But for me, having that extra charge on an invoice, it very rarely gets questioned. And when it does, that's the exact explanation that I give to them, right? Oh, I'm just recovering some of my costs, like my overhead. Like it's fact, do you like the way the system works?
Sure.
Do you like this whole cool case management system? It costs money,
Yeah. I mean, you're, to provide the product and the service that you offer them.
Yeah.
And
understanding that, when a retainer statement is filed, when a case is settled, like the attorneys are submitting their invoices to the courts, and the court's not saying like, no, take this out and do it. Like they're not getting that feedback. If they were, I would get that feedback from my clients saying, hey, you can't do this anymore. And it's a recoverable expense for them. Cost of doing business.
For sure. And I feel like a lot of people do that too. And, probably a lot of attorneys do that also. So, Yeah, so I think people nowadays more than ever understand
Yeah.
that there's an additional charge for things like that.
Yeah, and even like your database stuff, like everybody that pays all this money to, all the big data providers out there. And it always, like, whenever I see it on the message board, it drives me crazy. Oh, so and so is too expensive. This and this is
Yeah,
too expensive. Like, how are we
yeah,
spending money on this? And it's like,
yeah,
how are you not passing that cost along to your clients? Like, if you're
sure.
not doing that, what's wrong with you?
Yeah,
Shame on
yeah,
you.
for sure. And kind of the
Yeah,
mentality that I always say is like, if you think of your software as an employee, right, you would pay an employee to do a job and get some sort of value out of it.
yeah.
You can almost treat software of any type as that. So your cost is really alleviating the manual labor that somebody would else otherwise have to be doing.
Well, I got a bonus for you on top of that. You take that
Sure.
idea, you're not paying their FICA. There's
That's
no,
right. That's right.
and
Yeah.
every single business owner's chuckling right now, and every single employee is like, "What the heck is this
Yeah.
guy talking
Yeah.
about?"
Yeah. Yeah. Right. That's
Um,
funny.
but yeah, when you look at it that way, it's almost a no-brainer, And that was one of the realizations that I had to make too, because as my business has grown, and we've grown substantially, I'm now using more data. I require more
For
of
sure.
a footprint into whatever case management system I'm using, and that means my fees are going up, right? I have
Yeah.
more than one admin. Okay, my fees are going up, and getting to the point where I'm like, okay, it is what it is. I'm
Yeah.
paying this monthly fee to it, and I don't even think twice about it because, A, I'm happy that I've grown. This means that the business is doing
Sure.
well,
That's
and
that's 100% right.
B, I'm recovering it. So if you're not,
Yeah.
if you're not doing that, like, what are you doing?
If you're spending more on software, it probably means that you're generating more revenue to begin with.
Right.
So, I mean, you should be in a scale that slides. It won't be, the same price for the guy who has, one investigator versus someone who has a team of 50.
Yeah.
But that, usually means you have a lot of managers and a lot of admins and a lot of people, a lot of moving parts, and you
Yep.
have kind of climbed that ladder. So
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. And I think also having the goal, like if you've got the system set up, I think having someone internally to do QC for you, quality control, really
Yep.
important.
Yep.
If you have that administrator, somebody that's in-house, that's going to help everything move the way it should move, right? And it'll
Hmm.
help those clients that are maybe a little resistant to using case management or just don't really get it. Because, I've got a couple of clients that they've been around for a couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. They're
Eisenhower
used to the
may
way
have
things
been
have been.
Eisenhower may have been president when they were born, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
concept of you know uh, using case management, like, they're not there.
Yeah.
They've
And
just
that's
figured out how
okay
to use
though.
the cell phone.
There are going to be people who will never adopt it, and that's just the way they operate. But
Yep.
having the flexibility to work with those kind of people, on one hand, you have a guy who's never going to log into your system and always wants to get something, maybe in physical mail, who knows, right? And then you have another guy who if
There's
he
nothing
can't
more
submit the
maddening.
request online, he doesn't want to deal with you.
Every time I get something FedEx to my office and
Yeah.
it's a work assignment, I get so angry, man. Because I'm just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, for
oh, I
sure.
gotta scan it now and put it into the system and break it apart. Like, this is
Totally.
not the way we do things. This is not compute, man. This is
Yeah, I
compute.
know. I know. But it's the remnants of a legacy past.
It is. It is. Right. We're gonna
Yeah.
miss it when it's gone.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and having that QC, though, getting back to that point, I mean, just having one person dedicated to being like the point person to help your clients, utilize the system or get the most out of it too. If you can do that, if you can afford that, if you can put that in your business model, that will help you grow substantially. And that was one of the things that helped my client base embrace case management when I first moved over to it. Because they get these calls like, "What is this wizardry? I don't I don't understand this.
Exactly.
How
Yeah,
do we get
for
through it?"
sure.
And
And
having
I
a
think it's
dedicated
also important
person.
to cross-train people too, like to have, more than one person familiar with different aspects of the system. And this happens a lot where the person who, set it up and initiated everything and started everything is not the owner of the company. And eventually they go away. And then you get this call one day from a guy you've never talked to.
Yeah.
He says, "Oh, we've been using this this software for 5 years and I have no idea what to do." So
Yeah.
It's definitely a good idea to make sure multiple people are involved, and especially if you run the shop, you should be
Oh yeah.
at least, you know, somewhat familiar with the different functions.
I think the plan that I have has 5 admins or 4 admins, something like that, and all of them, everybody's on there.
Yeah,
I mean, the
everybody,
person
yeah.
who uses it the
Yeah,
least is me.
yeah,
But
for sure. Well,
you know,
that makes sense. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Somebody's out there
but
making money, right?
I do like to go in there and look at the numbers, right? The analytics.
That
That's
is
a
the number one thing people want is reporting. It
sure,
is the
sure.
yeah, the key to the castle.
What are some other misconceptions you would say that folks have about embracing case management?
Kind of what we were talking about maybe before we went live today, but just some of the security aspects um, of the system where a lot of people think that, their case management security is their security. And
Mhm.
so, I talk about this a lot, but the importance of just managing your own security outside of a case management system is just as important as managing, having the case management system manage a lot of your data security for you.
Yeah,
Things like making sure that all of your users are using multi-factor authentication and they're not using shared passwords. We
right,
even integrate into a platform that makes sure that people's passwords aren't a part of data breaches, across the internet.
right,
Um, but there's a lot of little things like least privilege. You want to set people up that only have access to the things that they need right now and not having access to everything in your system.
sure,
It's real easy to just give people access to everything and just say, just use the stuff you need. But being able to kind of understand the concepts of security and use those in a case management system is important. And I feel like a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm signed up for a case management system, like all the security's on their end. And it's
right.
really a shared responsibility model is what it's technically called, where, we take care of a lot of the permissions and the encryption and all that good stuff. But a lot of the user access and the authorization of things is really still up to you.
Yeah. So I can throw something at you, and this is I apologize in advance because it's kind of a curveball, but
Sure.
it's something that came to my head. What is the misconception on who owns the data? Who owns the cases?
Well, it's a tricky can go either way, but really, you're either a data controller or you're a data service provider. So like an example is, you own the data that you put in our system. We explicitly define that as client data. I mean, that's
Mhm.
your data. So we explicitly define that. Now, like if you were to sign up on our website and your information goes into our CRM, that's our data, even
Mhm.
though, it's technically your name. And you get into a lot of this when you start dealing with GDPR and
Yep.
Privacy Shield, and which has been renamed.
Sure.
But we have to comply with a lot of these international regulations. I mean, we do work in, we have a
Yeah.
data center in Australia and Canada, and they
No
have,
joke. No joke over there.
yeah,
Yep.
significantly more privacy restrictions than what we do.
Mhm.
But yeah, you have to be very specific on who owns what data and who's just controlling the data versus who owns the data.
Yeah, it's always I think one of the biggest misconception is okay, so I use this system and I'm not using them anymore. Am I going to be able to get my cases back?
Yeah,
Stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yes,
Yeah,
obviously.
for sure. And to be honest, and we always recommend up front, like you should always integrate some sort of redundancy into your workflow anyway,
Mhm.
whether you use like an automated API to offload data or you just build, even in the very least case, you're not using anything, you should have some sort of archive procedure where you're backing up somewhere, someplace else, even if it's literally take your files and move them out of your office because, when the plane crashes into the mountain and everything you have is in your one building,
Right.
you're going to have a problem.
Yeah, like in New York, they say you got to hold on to everything for at least 7 years, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So having a plane crash into your building, may not be a good excuse.
Yeah,
you know?
bad metaphor for that. Yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah. But
uh,
it is a good point though. It's like if you have something at a particular location, and something happens at that particular location.
yeah,
This is the whole thing that's so appealing about the cloud. But I think you have a good point there with the redundancy and just having some sort of backup. I know like we have everything, like we've got cloud, we've got external hard drives.
Yeah.
You know, I like to work in threes, man. That's always my my thing.
Yeah. If you got three, you got two. If you got two, you got one,
Right. You know, the whole Trinity. Let's just keep it you know, repetition in different places is the way to go about doing
yeah,
things.
I definitely promote that a lot just because, people like to say, oh, I have a backup. I back it up to my external hard drive or I put it on a thumb drive or whatever. If it's in
Mm.
the same place as the primary copy, then you probably have a problem because there's a single point of failure right there.
Right.
So for
So,
sure.
so the last point I think I want to make here before we wrap things up is that I think there's some misconception as well as far as cost basis and growth of the company, right? Where, you know, it's like, oh, it's going to cost too much. It's going to take up too much time.
Mm,
You know, I can't get out there and do like the billing work that I need to do. That was a huge misconception I had. You know, I'm talking my own personal experience.
sure.
And one of the reasons why it took me so long to do it. Like I did things that were good enough, right? It was good
Yes.
enough to run and do things, and I'm okay. Why would I spend that extra money? Why would I spend the extra time? It's good enough for what I'm doing, and I think
Hmm.
people don't understand that good enough is not really good enough. If you
Yeah.
have any intentions on growing your business, you know, speaking purely from an entrepreneurial point of view, you know, if there are no growth kickers there, if there's nothing to kind of push your business to be more efficient, you're probably not doing things the right way.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%. Yeah. We always call it the euphemism we always use. It's people who are trying to keep the ship afloat. There's a
right.
there's a there's a type of person who runs a company that is maxed out across the board, and every moment of their day is trying to make sure that everything that they do, their process that's already in place, gets done, and that the report gets out the door. And their biggest complaint is they don't have time to set up anything. They don't have time to get started because this is the way we've done it. This is the way we always do it,
Yeah.
and I got to make sure that this file gets into this Dropbox and it gets copied over to this spreadsheet and all the way down the row, and it's taking up all their time. So I think something that people could really take away is if you could step back just for a minute and reevaluate the process, the workflow,
Yeah.
and be open to adopting another workflow, a
Right. Be
simpler
honest about
workflow. Be
it.
honest about it. You'll set yourself up for scalability in the future. And, especially, and I was telling you before, like we've had people who started on track ops even when they were, one, two, three-man show. And, when we hear their testimonial down the road, their number one thing is, when we took on more people, we didn't have to change anything, and everything we were able to grow in the process to manage 10 cases was the same difficulty as managing 200 cases.
Amazing.
And obviously there's some logistics operations out in the field, but as far as managing the data, nothing's fallen through the cracks because that workflow is still viable when you scale up.
I think if you're not implementing a system like that, you're doing a disservice to your company. You know, as
For sure.
somebody who owns a business, if you're an entrepreneur, you want to grow your business. Like those factors have to be in place. And I love that visual that you gave of the sinking boat, right? Because to me, in my head, all I'm thinking is I don't want to be the guy that's just emptying buckets.
Totally.
Yeah, just emptying
Totally.
buckets. That's my day. My whole
But
day
they
is
don't, you don't have time to look up and even see
yeah.
what's
I'm just
around because you're so busy on the details, on
just
the
bailing out.
just
All I'm doing is
bailing out.
bailing out water.
Right.
Like
But every time you take on a new client, it becomes that much more difficult because now you have another set of, responsibilities, and they have different SLAs and different, intricacies that they want you to follow. And it's
for sure.
very difficult to manage it if you don't have a system in place that manages that kind of stuff already.
Right. When you make people, you make people follow your procedure. I've had those conversations too.
Yeah.
What is this track ops thing, or what is
Yeah.
this? How are we using that? What is that all about? You know, why am I
Yeah.
getting this email? Who's it from? It's like no. This is the way we do things.
Yeah.
You know, I had a guy. It's funny. Hasidic guy, right? He calls me up and he's asked me. He wants me to do these things, and he's telling me, oh, do you know this? You know that? And like really. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's great. All you got to do is send me an email. You know, do I get the email? No, it's coming over WhatsApp. He's just sending me tons of data over WhatsApp, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, That's not what I asked you to do. That's not really the procedure. Can you send me an email? Crickets, crickets, crickets. Gotta go to, I'm like, it's got to go through the system. This is how it gets done. Nothing. I'm like, okay, just gonna take this and I'm gonna send it to myself in
Yeah,
my system just to get it up because I'm just waving a white flag. I'm emptying a bucket here. We're gonna move on.
totally. And there's always going to be, it's kind of a funny thing we always say, some of the best investigators that are out there are not interested in using technology too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes it's a challenge of getting your own people on board, and not rubbing people the wrong
Dude,
way, because, you
this
don't
is
want to
so
lose somebody
true.
who's a great surveillance investigator just because they don't want to, deal with technology too.
So true. That was one of the biggest issues we had too when we started onboarding everybody and doing like, kind of my own team. Like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
is this? I got to use this now. I got
Yeah.
to do this, or, lawyer clients like, wow, this is like an extra step for me.
Totally.
Now I got it. Like you just email me and I just put it into my system, put it into, my own case management system. Now I got to take
Sure.
it off your system to put it into my system. And I'm like, don't know what to tell you, Charlie. Sorry.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
it is. Like, this is how
Yeah.
we're doing things,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's always
embrace it.
room for integrations, opportunities for integrations and things like that.
100%.
But
Yeah.
people are definitely, in my experience, kind of one of the things I've taken away is that people are very adverse to change. And especially the longer they've been doing something, the less likely they are to want to change the way they do it, even down to like our case numbers look like this. And, we sign our emails like this, and it has to be this way.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's really difficult to break that habit. But if you can, a lot of times you'll find on the other side of it, they're like really grateful that they went through that process.
Oh man, I used to have like going back years, I had, I don't know, 4 or 5 different investigators working for me at one point that all did reports a different way. And I
Yeah,
was like,
for
no, no,
sure.
no, no, this is maddening. Like we all
Yeah,
have to, like, you got to follow a template.
you got to
Every
follow a
should look
template.
the same. Like this is what they're looking for, and it's those kind of little professional things, right? And having a case management system makes you look more professional, right? Having all your reports look the same, more professional. Being able to, have white paper, like to what white label. I'm sorry, being able to white label reports to have your logos on it, like that's a big deal.
For
Um,
sure.
and that's important. Some of the vendors that I use that they do reports for. So I was like, well, make sure you're white labeling this stuff because it's gotta have that expectation of consistency, that brand that I've built. We got to make sure we're following all that.
Yeah, for sure. And if they put all the information into your system, it makes it a lot easier to get the report out the way you want it. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. And those are battles to have too at some
Totally.
point. Yeah, but I remember, like my guys just kicking and fighting about, I don't, this system, but now they love it.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure. Yeah. Sometimes and like we were saying earlier, sometimes it's, we found like the newer generation of people expect to have an app or have some sort of system. So you might want to get a guy who wants to come to work for you and they're like, okay, where's the portal if you don't have
right,
one?
right,
Sometimes the opposite scenario is
right,
true too. And they're like, oh, if I have to like email this or, text this or whatever it is, or
right.
log in and put it in a Dropbox folder and all this stuff that, that becomes cumbersome on the other side too.
It, it's a great point. It really
Yeah,
is. Like
for
everybody's
sure.
gotta be on the same page.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I think this is a good place to put a bow on it. And this was great. I feel like we could probably riff on a whole bunch of couple
Do this
other
for 2 hours.
Yeah, but we'll save some for the next episode.
Yeah, yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but thank you for coming on as a sponsor. Um, TrackOps is a sponsor for Investigators Toolbox. There's a great benefit that they're offering for membership. I think it's 10% discount.
10%.
And as your company grows, that 10% starts to become
It
a
adds
lot.
up. Yeah,
And
for
listen,
sure.
that could be more than the cost to be on Investigators Toolbox for the whole year. The amount that you're
Oh yeah,
saving. Um, so yeah, I would say, definitely you want to go check that out. And all of our members on Toolbox, if you haven't checked out TrackOps, I would say you definitely click the link, go onto the into the system and make sure that you're at least seeing the benefits out of it. And, if you're using a different system and maybe you're not 100% happy with that system, you can integrate things very easily over and change things over as well. their options. So definitely reach out. And I want to personally thank you for sponsoring the podcast and being a partner with Toolbox.
I'm glad to do it. Your platform's
Great to have you
awesome.
on board, and
Appreciate it.
I'm excited to continue to grow our relationship together, and just help other investigators. And really, that's what it comes down to. This podcast is about helping people that are trying to grow their business and figure out how to be better at what they do. And you're a big part of that, man, by sponsoring it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you as well for getting the information out there. So I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch everybody next week on the next episode. Take care.
All right. Thanks again. Have a good one.
Thanks for checking out the show. A special thanks to Ian for coming on to talk about his great software. If you have questions about case management, you need to give TrackOps a try. You owe it to your caseload. We also want to thank our newest sponsor, 4 Pillars Insurance Research, for sponsoring the show. Additional thanks to Campbell Insurance, Scope Now, PI Institute for Education, and don't forget about investigatorstoolbox.com, where you can type in Perspectives 50 to save $50 when you join. Please also follow Matt and Satellite Investigations on LinkedIn. If you have a question or a comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We'd like your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. We'll be back next week with a new show, so make sure you tune in and stay safe out there.